Hey everybody, and welcome to Dominion Cards, the video series where we take a strategic, in-depth look at various cards in the board game Dominion. Today we're looking at Salvager. This is a 4-cost action card from Seaside, and it says +1 buy, trash a card from your hand, +1 coin per coin it costs. Now, as always, clarifications just come at the start of the video. So cards can cost things other than just coins, such as potions and debt, or a combination of these. Only the coin part counts. So if you trashed a card that, say, cost 3 coins and a potion, this will only generate you 3 money when you trash it. And if you were to trash a card costed, say, only debt, like City Quarter, that costs just 8 debt, you won't actually get any money from Salvager. Now, you can trash 0-cost cards, or cards that don't have any coin value in their cost, and you still get the plus buy from that. But Salvager itself won't actually generate you any coin on that turn. Now, when you first look at Salvager, you might spot some similarities to Remodel and cards like Remodel. So Remodel, you trash a card and then you gain another card in its place, whereas with Salvager, you trash a card and then it gives you a buy and hopefully a bunch of money, which you can use to buy another card, which is kind of like gaining one. So you might think to yourself, hey, this seems fairly similar. And the truth is that Salvager fills a similar role in your deck to Remodel, but there are important differences in how it works. Now, I'm going to use Remodel as a comparison throughout this video because we've talked a lot about Remodel and its variants. There's a couple of concepts that we brought up, and I think it's useful to build on those. But it's worth noting that Salvager is different enough in practice to Remodel that it's probably best not to actually think of it as a Remodel variant, right? This is doing a similar thing to Remodel. It doesn't really work in quite the same way, so just thought I would get that out of the way, something for you to keep in mind. So let's start off talking about Salvager by talking about it in the early game, because you can open with Salvager, and people do open with Salvager reasonably often enough. So let's talk about why you might want to do that. So most of the time, your deck, you're going to start off with some estates. These do cost money. They've all got a value of 2. So if you were to trash them with Salvager, would actually generate you 2 money. Now, you can think of this as being kind of a little bit like Moneylender, but trashing estates instead of coppers. When you play Moneylender, although it generates you 3 money, you do actually get a net increase of 2 that turn. So Salvager is sort of doing the same thing there, but getting rid of the estate. It's better, of course, to get rid of estates than coppers, so that might sound really good. However, you do also have a lot more coppers in your deck than estates, so it's a lot easier to whiff, to draw Salvager without any estates in your hand. So it is important to try and get draw in your going in your deck so that you can actually match up your Salvager with your estates. Because especially even if you manage to match the Salvager with an estate on turn 3 or 4, you've now only got 2 estates left in your deck, and it starts to become even harder to match up your Salvager. So, it's not going to magnetically attach itself to your estates. So you will start not being able to pair it up if you only bought it to try and trash your estates. So it needs a little bit of help in that regard. Now, assuming that you don't whiff on turn 3 or 4, that's extra money is going to help you hit 5. It's sort of giving you money kind of like a silver would, right? Because it's giving you 2 money, but it's also getting rid of an estate, and that's great. Of course, you don't have to think of Salvager just in terms of hitting 5. I know we talk about that a lot in these videos, and hitting 5 early on tends to be important in Dominion because the 5-cost cards in general are pretty good cards, right? But bear in mind, this is giving you a plus buy. So sometimes Salvager can be really good when you actually just want a lot of cheap cards instead. Sometimes you get really strong 2-cost cards like Fool's Gold, where you want as many copies of them as quickly as possible sometimes. Salvager can be very good for doing that as well. And you getting rid of the estates is good. That's sort of why you would do it over something else. Now, you don't always start with estates. Sometimes you start with shelters, which come from the Dark Ages expansion, and that makes opening with Salvager a lot worse, because shelters only cost 1 instead of 2, but also you might not actually want to get rid of the Necropolis because it can be useful, and that means that Salvager just doesn't really have any good targets at the open. You can also have coppers replaced with heirlooms, which could make it better or worse. So heirlooms typically, or maybe they all do, I think they actually cost more than 0, and some of them you don't necessarily want to play that much, like Cursed Gold, which I believe is actually worth 4, so you could trash that and get a huge amount of money without actually ever needing to play it. Or it could make it worse because, like, say, Pasture is your heirloom, and in that case you don't actually want to get rid of your estates, in which case, why would you buy Salvager to get rid of them? Now, estates aren't the only sort of junk that you get that you want to trash. Obviously, Salvager is going to be significantly worse at trashing coppers, curses and ruins, because they're not going to generate you any money. Salvager's kind of feels a lot like Trade Route in that regard. Trade Route from Prosperity trashes a card, gives you a plus buy. It's one of the worst trashes in Dominion. Trade Route can generate you money, but it only tends to do so really late in the game and doesn't do that much. So Salvager can actually be worse than Trade Route sometimes. That's just sort of how bad it kind of is at trashing these cards. But that doesn't mean that you don't want it. Like, trashing is trashing. Sometimes, if there's nothing else available, you absolutely will still buy Salvager to trash your junk. But you got to bear in mind that it is very slow to do that. And unlike a card like Remodel, you're not actually required to gain a replacement and to spend that plus buy. You can just not spend it, and in that case, it is actually getting rid of your curses and your coppers for you, right? You are actually thinning them down and not gaining anything as a replacement. So it's just very slow. So generally, Salvager, it's ideal if it's not the only trasher. You would really much prefer something else to try and get rid of your other junk other than your estates, if available. If something is available, like, say, Moneylender, only trashes coppers, then I'm probably going to go for that. And I might even go for that first, like, especially if it was a choice between, like, Moneylender specifically and Salvager. I would definitely buy the Moneylender first, because it's not going to whiff so often early on as well. Spice Merchant is another really good, like, 4-cost copper-only trasher that I would definitely take, like, over Salvager first time I hit 4 on my opening buys. So that's enough about talking about Salvager in the opening. It's not really its main use. It's not where its true power lies. So what is Salvager actually really about? What is the main purpose of this card? So the real benefit that you get from it is right towards the end of the game, when you are transitioning your deck from building to scoring. And what you want to do is you want to take all of those cards that you've gained, the useful ones, your action cards that you're, like, drawing with and stuff, and you want to just get rid of them and turn them into a huge chunk of money and an extra buy towards the end of the game. And the reason why you want to do that is because you just want to shoot up and grab, like, extra provinces as quickly as you can. So the aim is that you're building this engine, and then in order to beat stuff like basic big money strategies, you're ideally looking to spend extra time building and then suddenly cash in all of the value of your engine to get multiple victory points per turn and sort of, like, catch up and overtake the slower, like, treasure-based deck. And so Salvager lets you suddenly throw a whole bunch of money into your deck, basically. It's not really doing that, but it's letting you generate a whole load of coin by essentially taking all of those useful cards that you've gained throughout the game and been using and just get rid of them and chop them into a load of cash and an extra buy. So it's speeding up how soon you get to reach that payoff stage. In a sense, you're, like, slightly shortcutting the amount of building that you need to do. So you usually want Salvager at times when you look to end the game quickly. You don't really want to do it when you think you might end up in some really long, drawn-out game. So, like, say your opponent isn't also going for provinces and they're going for something like Duchy Duke. Might be that you don't want Salvager because you are going to be trashing a functional deck and it's actually going to take you quite a long time to empty the province pile, and you could find that your deck just sputters out and dies. Like, that's not necessarily going to be the case. Like, maybe you can just get everything really quickly. Salvager certainly helps you do that. But, the general concept there is that you are destroying your deck while using Salvager, but it doesn't matter if your deck doesn't work once the game is over because you're not playing with it anymore. So you just basically throw your deck away right close towards the end of the game and turn it into money so that you can just end the game pretty quickly. So you can usually get away with 1 or 2 turns of trashing important cards out of your deck, but if you spend too much longer and you start going like 3 or 4 turns of doing that, you really will massively hamper your deck's ability to function, and your deck will just fall apart. So this means that if you want to be able to trash all of your useful engine components, you kind of need to have spare engine components that you can get away with. And ideally, you would still be able to do stuff like draw your deck. At that point, you will just be throwing away a little bit of extra reliability and those spare cards that you don't necessarily need. Maybe you've got a few too many villages that you're not actually using. You just have them so that it's more likely that you draw them at a good time. So you can sort of get rid of them then. You can trash those on those turns before the end of the game. So how do you get enough spare cards? Well, oftentimes stuff like good gainers, like Ironworks, Workshop, those can help you gain a load of cards. Or you just have a deck that's very good at generating money and buys, and you could just use even more of it. Salvager tends to struggle on what we call singleton boards, which are boards where you don't have any means of gaining more than 1 card per turn. And obviously Salvager is giving you a plus buy, so technically it's never a singleton board when Salvager is around. But if there's nothing else that's letting you gain more cards or giving you buys, then what you find is that it could actually be quite difficult to build a deck that has any spare capacity at all. And a lot of those decks tend to only look to single province anyway and do it as consistently as possible, as soon as possible. So Salvager might just not have any room to actually do anything useful. You just haven't got enough cards in your deck to actually consider trashing them for money. Now, something worth noting, and this is where the remodel comparisons come in. When we talk about remodel, we think about how powerful it is at the late game, and it's really good at trashing stuff like gold. So remodel very specifically wants cards at particular costs, like 6 for gold, and it can turn them directly into provinces. You can still do this with Salvager, but it is worth noting that it is actually a little bit worse than remodel, specifically in this situation. So remodel loves gold gainers. Salvager, however, when you trash a gold, you're sort of only getting 3 money out of it, because had you not played the Salvager, you still would have played that gold for 3 money. So Salvager, obviously trashing the gold, it's going to give you 6 money instead of the 3 that you played, but it's just 3 money and a buy, right? And that's okay. It's giving you less than something like Baron, right? But 3 money and a buy, it's fine. It's not going to blow your socks off, and you do actually have to get rid of the gold in order to do that as well. However, one situation where it is just as good as remodel is when we do what we call milling of your provinces and your colonies. So this is where you trash a province and you then just gain another province, and so the net result is that your score doesn't change from doing that, but you run the pile down, and that is when you are in the lead, you try and end the game faster. So Salvager is very good at milling provinces, because when you trash a province, it gives you 1 buy and 8 money, and you can use both of those to just buy the province back again. And you can also do it with colonies and stuff as well. So same as remodel in that regard. But it's worth noting that there are things that Salvager can interact with that remodel kind of can't, and that is some expensive endgame events like Dominate and Alliance. Dominate, you have to buy it. It costs 14, and it basically gives you 15 points. You can't interact with events at all with stuff like remodel, but Salvager can help you afford them. And Alliance is that one where you gain a copy of province, duchy, and a state, and a gold, and a silver, and a copper. You get 6 cards and you buy it for 10. I suppose you're not always going to get a board where you have both Salvager and remodel, so maybe the comparison isn't going to apply most of the time, but when it does, that is something you should consider. Is remodel with the gold gainer good when dominate is on the board? I mean, it might be that you're actually going to get better value from Salvager rather than remodel. And one of the major advantages that Salvager has is that while we talk about remodel really liking stuff like gold gainers, Salvager doesn't actually need to gain cards at very particular costs. Salvager can trash basically anything and still get value out of it. So your extra engine components might only cost like 4 because you've been gaining them with like workshop variants and you just got a whole ton of extra like 4 cost cards. Well, you can trash these and that will give you 4 money in a buy, contributing towards buying an extra province that turn. And sometimes that's all you really need, right? Like you're not... With remodel, you only have to get up to 8 money and a gold gainer, and then you get 2 provinces. But you might have more than 8 money per turn, and Salvager can just make up the difference of the extra money that you need to actually get up to a double province stage. So this is another reason why Salvager's pretty good when you've got a gainer, because just because you've got a card that's gaining, it's not necessarily going to be able to gain you golds, but it doesn't have to. With Salvager, you can just gain basically anything that is worth money that you can throw into your deck. You might be able to trash it with Salvager for more benefit. Obviously, the more expensive it is, the better. But, that's... it's not as picky, which makes it a lot more flexible, if slightly less powerful. But a caveat to that is that because it doesn't get you all the way to like buying an extra province per turn, you still actually need some extra money to come from somewhere, right? If you are trashing only 4 cost cards with Salvager, well, that's only giving you 4 of the 8 money that you need. How are you going to make up the other 4? And so you need to answer that question if you want to actually use Salvager to its full extent. So Salvager, normally it needs to be part of a good engine anyway, an engine that was already decent at generating money and drawing cards. The big thing with Salvager is that it gives you a shortcut into how long you actually need to build and like how many golds and silvers you actually need to add to your deck. So like if you imagine a situation where, for example, you've got like a workshop, so you can gain a lot of 4 cost cards, you're already drawing your deck and you're generating 12 money per turn, and you've already got, like, say, an extra buy. Well, you could spend that 12 money and 2 buys on 2 golds, and then you're getting up to generating, like, a double province. Or you could buy a province and a Salvager, and then on all your future turns, you're looking to trash a 4-cost card that you gain with your workshop, and then you now have 16 money that you can start double provincing every turn instead, right? So you didn't have to spend that turn buying the 2 golds. You got to pick up a province, and you're already now back at the stage where you can start double provincing. So you're going to be ahead of someone who just chose to pick up money instead, right? So that's it. Salvager is it sort of like a super woodcutter in that regard? It's giving you, or like a baron, right? It's giving you a bunch of money and a buy, and you need some other card in your hand like Baron does. But you are like, instead of just discarding the estate, you're permanently removing something instead. But it can go higher. It could generate you less money. You know, it's just there. You have to deal with it. It's not necessarily. Sometimes it will be nuts. Sometimes it'll only be so good. It depends on the value of what you gain. Obviously, you're going to be better with stuff like Artisan. They get you 5 cost cards, just that little bit stronger. It depends. Now, just as a general note, which I sort of feel like I need to go over in these videos, because if I don't, I'm sure someone might mention it. This is, because it's a cost-relevant trasher, all of the usual caveats for cost-relevant trashers apply. Some cards really like these types of cards and work well with them, and some cards make them worse. So the 2 classic examples are Fortress and Rats from Dark Ages. These cards work really well with anything that trashes a card and gives you a benefit that scales with the cost of what you trashed, like Salvager. And cost reduction tends to be bad unless you can play it after the Salvager, like you can with Bridge. You can't actually do that with all cost reduction, but Bridge gives you that flexibility. Salvager, of course, it's nice for getting rid of cards in the mid-game that you don't have a use for anymore, like your Moneylender when you run out of coppers, or your Witches after you finish junking. We've talked about this in Remodel. It's exactly the same. So I'm only going to go over this quickly here. This is the same with all these sorts of cards. Any card that's cost-relevant trashing, all of these still apply. So you can probably think up more examples, but it's the same sort of deal, really. Some final miscellaneous points. Because Salvager directly earns you money, it works with capitalism, it works with Way of the Chameleon, unlike other things like, say, Remodel. Overall, it's an average card. I'd say it's probably weaker than Remodel, just because Remodel is so good in a lot of games at actually, just gaining provinces directly tends to be a little bit more powerful than Salvager's only partially gaining you provinces. But, it is different. The way that you build your deck is different than it does with Remodel. It's filling a similar niche, but it's not quite the same. But it is probably lower than Remodel overall. Also worth noting that if hitting 5 on turn 3 or 4 is really, really important in a game, you might not want Salvager, even though you can think of it a bit like the Moneylender for estates, just because of that chance to whiff. Unless you've got something other silver-like in your deck, like you open to Salvager and silver, for example, Salvager will only generate you 5 money if you happen to draw it alongside exactly 1 estate. And the odds are actually not super great for that. It's just the fact there are so few estates, and you've got to pair it up with this exact amount. It means that you are not actually necessarily going to hit 5. So do take care of that when you want to open. It's yes, it's giving you money. Yes, it's trashing your estates. But you might have to wait an extra shuffle until you can start buying the 5-cost cards. And sometimes that's no big deal, but sometimes it's absolutely critical. And you are taking a risk when you open with Salvager in that way. So, well, that's sort of everything that I have to say about Salvager. It is very board dependent, so this advice is particularly generic. But, that's just the way some cards are. So what we're going to do now is, here we are on the online client, we're going to generate some kingdoms that include Salvager, and we're going to assess how good Salvager is for that kingdom. So, looking at this one, Salvager is actually our only trasher, and we do have Witch in the kingdom, and we don't have any villages. We've got 2 defense cards, Lighthouse and Moat, but there's no real way to gain control of your deck with an engine. So what are the options here? We could go all out on Witch and Lighthouses. So we could open Mill and Lighthouse and look to use the Mill to gain a Witch early and just play a load of Witches. That, even if there's Lighthouse, it's probably still decent enough to just play Witch in the hope that our opponent isn't going to have coverage all the time. We don't just want to spend all our time buying Lighthouses if there's no actual engine to help us draw. Is Salvager decent in this deck? Not really. You are going to be just trashing Curses, Coppers, Estates. It's never going to reach the high echelons. And are you going to just draw it dead with your Witch now and then? You don't really want to be drawing it alongside Witch. So I actually think I don't bother with Salvager here. I am just looking to try and get a few Lighthouses. I don't really want to be drawing Lighthouses dead with Witch either. And I am just going to go all in on Witches and gaining golds. Is Bureaucrat good in this sort of deck? I don't really like Court. Well, is Courtier fine? I mean, if I'm going Lighthouse, Mill, and Witch, those are 3 action cards that have 2 types on it, And there is Courtyard as well, though, but I think I prefer Witch. Witch is going to be better. Is gaining the golds with Courtier decent? Is gaining silvers with Bureaucrat decent? It feels bad. I still don't like Bureaucrat, but, because there is Lighthouse as well, so even the attack's not going to do so good, even though I am opening Mill, but yeah, so I think it's just Lighthouse and Witch money deck, really, with opening a Mill or 2. Yeah, so I think Salvager, it doesn't have any use on that board. There's no engine, and it's too bad at trashing stuff. You just slow yourself down too much. There's no real payoff for trying to get thin there, so no good. Here we have, we've got Salvager and Remodel, so we do actually get to compare the two here. We have got a village this time in Festival and also Shantytown. Neither of them draw. Our only draw cards are Wishing Well and Caravan, yuck, and technically Shantytown sometimes, yikes. This is this is no good, but we actually do really want to get thin because we got Vassal and we got Market and we got like Poachers. There are reasons to get thin. So I think I'm doing it. Would I prefer Remodel over Salvager? Well, there's no 2-cost cards to gain. So I think I would rather open with a Salvager over a Remodel. I think, because would I prefer just turning my estates directly into caravans? Is that going to be better than salvaging the estate and buying a market or a festival? I think Caravan's actually decent here. Caravan is the best draw that we have, and there is reasons to build an engine because we've got market. And even Wishing Well, you can have a very homogenous deck here, or at least reasonably homogenous. You just want to get Wishing Well's caravans markets as much as you can, and vassals. And Wishing Well, when you miss, it might help you, know when's a good time to play Vassal, maybe. But then again, how many terminals are you going to have? Probably very few, so I think Vassal's low risk. I would rather not be buying festivals in this deck, to be honest. I would rather just stay with the non-terminal cards. But maybe what I do is I open Remodel, and then on some future 4, I get a Salvager, and I look to salvage my Remodel. I would much rather have Salvager at the end of the game than Remodel to trash spare Wishing Wells or Caravans or whatever at the end of the game. It seems like it might be good there. So I do actually want a Salvager in this deck, but I don't feel like it's better early on. Then again, I'm not actually that interested in hitting 5, but then Remodel is also gaining me 4-cost cards anyway. I feel like I gain more cards quickly with Remodel over Salvager. I remodel estates into Caravan, Wishing Well, and then I get to buy a Wishing Well. Hopefully I still have 3 money left over. It's just going to be better than Salvager in that regard, but it's going to get pretty bad pretty fast. So maybe not. Maybe I don't worry about these cards immediately, and I open with Caravan and Smugglers. I think Smugglers will be good. I do want to gain a bunch of these, so I will be getting a Smugglers. And if my opponent's buying markets and stuff, that's fine. I'll take them. So I'm going to open Caravan and Smugglers, and I will get a Salvager, but I'm not going to open with it. And I will look, as I start drawing my deck a little bit better, I'm going to look to basically salvage the estates, I guess. I think I'm just going to skip Remodel. It feels a little bit better, but maybe I don't need it. I don't think it's quite good enough here. I think I prefer having the Salvager. There's just, when do you get Remodel when I want to be buying all these Caravans and Wishing Wells? I guess I don't really want Poacher. I can't deal with the discarding. Is Shantytown good? Not really, because our deck's mostly made up of cantrips, so Shantytown feels pretty bad. I don't really want any at all. I guess if I ever add a village, so I can play a Salvager and a Smugglers, I would pick up a single Festival. Seems like it's going to be better. Yeah, so I think Salvager wins over Remodel there, just because all the cards we want to gain are lower cost, but we do actually want to build a functional deck, and it would be nice to trash some of them towards the end of the game to get a bit more money. I think that's going to give us just enough speed up that's going to be useful. So that was a good board for Salvager. Here we have Native Village as a village, and we've got Wharf. We've also got Nobles as a village and draw. We've got a minion deck as an alternative. We've got Lookout and Moneylender and Salvager all to trash. So there's a big engine here. We've got Native Village Wharf. Sounds pretty good. I think that's going to be better than the minion deck, to be honest. I'm not worried about the minion attack. at all. Because what are you going to do with minion? There's nothing to really play other than a lot of minions. I would much rather have dwarves and nobles and stuff in my deck. By building a proper draw engine, I get to take advantage of nobles giving me points as well. Smugglers is going to be good in this deck. So I open Moneylender on 4. And do I open Smugglers or do I open Lookout? Do I go Moneylender and Lookout and I get thin very quickly? I think so. I would rather trash estates with Lookout, and I use Moneylender and I start buying wharves and like native villages. I'm going to have some other 3 or 2 cost cards to get a native village. Eventually I add some silvers. I do want a Salvager. Do I want a Salvager in this deck eventually? I think I do. I'm going to get thin, and then I am going to have to start buying like golds and silvers at some point. Like, I do actually have to add some money somewhere. Or you could even buy minion for like it's over a silver, like it's fine. And then eventually you can just like salvage them towards the end to try and get some money. I think I do get a Salvager. I think just because earning money is hard on this deck, but I actually do want a bunch of stuff. There's a good engine to build. So Smugglers is also going to be gaining me, like it might even be gaining me like nobles and dwarves and stuff. And if my opponent goes a minion deck, I can smuggle them and then I can salvage them later. So Salvager is good. It's also going to get rid of Moneylender and Lookout at some point, but I'm not opening with it. I'm taking Moneylender first. But yeah, like Salvager, this is another decent Salvager board. Maybe I'd have been happier with a remodel because I might get a bunch of nobles, but you know, there is no remodel variant on this board, and you take what you can get. So Salvager seems decent here. Well, nobles again. Isn't this like the 3rd game with nobles in it? I'm already forgetting. So we do have nobles as a village. It is our only village, which kind of stinks, because it's very expensive. We have got bridge as a payload. Is there any draw in this deck? No. Yeah, sorry, yes, there's nobles. But nobles is the only village, and it's the only draw. That means we are not really running a very good functional engine. We just don't have much draw or village space in our deck at all, neither of those. And I think that means that there's not enough capacity to actually use bridge. Now, we do have Upgrade as an alternative to trashing with Salvager. I do like Upgrade. I think I would like to open with a mill to hit 5 for Upgrade and start upgrading my estates rather than salvage them, and also get multiple upgrades and start like getting rid of coppers, and also get rid of any curses from Sea Hag. I actually don't think Sea Hag's going to be so good here, because Upgrade's going to eventually get thin decently, and village space and draw space is so tough that Sea Hag doesn't feel great to me, honestly. Like, I think I skip Sea Hag here, even though it's a junker. I'm going to open Mill, and do I just want to go all in on vassals rather than money? I don't think so. I think vassals actually pretty bad here. I think I'm eventually actually going to want explorer or like treasure maps. I think, or maybe both. So I think what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to get thin with Upgrade. I will pick up nobles where I can. I can go all in on upgrades and start upgrading upgrades into nobles maybe at some point. I'm going to open Mill to hit 5 to get an upgrade. I'm going to get silver as well. And eventually I'm going to get a deck that just has a bunch of really good high quality treasures in it. If I get super thin, I can look to treasure map. I can upgrade some silvers into treasure maps maybe. And then maybe eventually I'll upgrade my mill into more upgrades. I might get an explorer at some point. It seems like eventually it might be okay. If I was ever looking to, if I got treasure maps and then I was looking like to buy another gold, maybe I would just get an explorer instead. Like, I think it's going to be okay when I've thinned my deck to match it up with province. I think bridge just doesn't really get a look in here. I don't know if Salvager gets a look in either, to be honest. I think... yeah, I don't feel like there's gonna be enough decent stuff to salvage. I'm going to have a bunch of golds, which is fine, but the draw is so bad that I don't think salvage is really helping me all that much. I would rather just cram more golds in. It's probably going to be better, and just keep a large number of golds in my deck. And would I be better off like playing bridge instead of Salvager? I don't know. I really don't like bridge here. I think upgrade is the key card that really makes this deck work, honestly. I want to focus on just getting a bunch of upgrades and then like treasure mapping and trying to get nobles where I can and just really looking to just get a bunch of points, basically. The engine's difficult, but you still want to build... You still want to get thin and build something. You have to protect. Like, if you don't go for like upgrades, you are going to get sea hagged, right? It's going to be a problem. So you want to get thin to make sea hag like irrelevant, basically. So I think I skip Salvager on that board. I just think the lack of draw means that I can't really use it for what you want to, even though I might have a bunch of high-cost cards in my deck. And here comes the final kingdom. So straight away I spot Ambassador, which is just nuts. And it's going to dominate this by the looks of it. We have got Sentry as well for trashing, but this is probably going to be Ambassador. I haven't even fully looked yet. We have got draw with Smithy, and we have got a village with Festival. So there is a draw engine here. It's not super great, but we've got Ambassador to get us thin, and we will get very thin. So the draw is absolutely fine. We've got Artisan to help us pick up festivals, and we can even gain like spare sentries as well. I don't think we're in a rush to go up to Sentry. I would much rather have Ambassador early on. Like Sentry is this. If I open 5-2, do I skip the Ambassador and just go straight for Sentry? I probably do, to be honest. Yeah, maybe 5-2. I actually don't bother with Ambassador. But if I open 3-4, I'm getting an Ambassador, and maybe I would be fine. Would I be fine with a Baron as well? I think so. I think I want a Baron to hit 6 to get Artisan. Getting to Artisan is important, but getting thin is important. Like Ambassador just sort of beats out maximising your chance to hit 6 early, but Baron might actually achieve that for me. So I'm going to open Ambassador Baron. I'm going to end up flooding my deck with Festivals and Smithies, and eventually Artisan can be picking up like Sentries, and I actually might be able to smash them with Salvager towards the end. I do have Courtier. Courtier, if I did get an Ambassador, there's a card with 2 types. It can gain me golds. Is that decent here? I think so. I think that's my best source of money. Harem, I'm probably never actually getting any. I guess I could have 1 if I never got an Ambassador. I opened 5-2. And I will be gaining some golds, and I will have a draw engine. It's going to get me some money with Festival. Maybe Salvager, Salvager seems fine, but maybe it's not necessary. Hopefully I will have a whole bunch of Festivals and Smithies and golds, and I might already have enough buys and money that Salvager just isn't worth it. But at the same time, I'm probably going to have Ambassadors and Barons in my deck that I might still be able to smash towards the end of the game. So I can probably pick up a Salvager at some point and trash something. It's probably fine. But it doesn't feel so great on this board, to be honest. There's just so much other economy and buys available. I wonder, I'm honestly curious, is Ambassador here actually just not so good? Because you really want to hit 6, and you can start gaining sentries with Artisan, and Sentry is going to keep you thin against an Ambassador onslaught, but it's also going to help you have good turns to start buying these good components early on. Maybe, but you wouldn't. Would you really skip Ambassador? Would you do it? What are you going to get? You're going to get the Baron, but no, I think your deck falls apart too quickly if you don't do it. I think you have to open Ambassador on a 3-4. You've just got to get thin. Maybe the 5-2 opening without Ambassador is better, but on a 3-4, you have to do it, I think. Yeah, you've got to get this card out of deck. Anyway, that's besides the point. So Salvager's only okay here, I think. Anyway, that was Salvager. As you see, it's a fine card. It's something that I want again, sort of a like remodel. I usually want it when it's in the kingdom, even if I'm only going to use it a little bit towards the end, right? So it's not mind-blowing, but actually it can be quite good towards the end. It's a nice little payoff at the end for your engine, so yeah. But yeah, it's fine card, really. Anyway, hope that was useful for you, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.